Started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Tanev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it was just, it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, no, I'm kidding, Chris, you can actually go now.
no, hold on.
Oh, we had to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still had, hold on. All right. Chris go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. Yeah, he's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
Saying, oh yeah, I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast here on a Wednesday spring afternoon/evening. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks. We're also live as well on Twitter as well. You can just watch us there or subscribe wherever you get your audio, or check us out on the Area 51 Sports Network, as we are here to prepare us for the Vancouver Canucks to take on the Vegas Golden Knights. They played on Sunday with a 3-2 overtime victory for Vegas. I would say that this is a big game, but I'm going to just simply say that this is a game and they will play it. And
there's more than this. I hate that, honestly.
Well, hello, Sean.
Hi, Kev.
No, I'm just saying that, I guess we should have had the math doesn't look good drinking game. Like, next year, we should create bingo cards where we have all of the cliches, but the math looks really bad that I'm at the point where I'm not believing that the Canucks will make the playoffs. So
it's not just that for me, though. And before I get too far in, hi, Chris.
Hi.
Chris is first episode from Kelowna, British Columbia.
And wow. Yeah, the empty wall, but I will eventually have my Canucks backdrop back. Just give me some time to get situated and it'll be there.
That's fair. I know you. I mean, you're moving. It's totally fine. I guess. Go ahead, Sean. And by the way, Tyler is coming. We're expecting Tyler to appear. Devin is actually. This is where I think Devin is. I believe that Devin snuck a flight out to Georgia to make sure that he was on time to sit at the right spot to watch the great Tiger Woods pull off a possible Masters miracle this weekend, coming back from that car accident to winning the Masters. Anyway, Sean, to you.
But yeah, I hate it's just another game and a string of whatever. There are things to watch for this team. There's the continued progression of Podkolzin. It's not just about the playoffs, right? Continued progression of Podkolzin. You've got who is going to assert themselves and make sure that they are part of this team going forwards. Because this upcoming offseason is going to be huge. I think there's going to be some drastic changes. And yeah, it sucks that we don't have Quinn Hughes playing tonight because he's sick, and you have Brock Besser out with an injury. But you still have to look at that and say, these guys are playing for jobs. And you want to see what this team looks like going forwards. We have a lot of talk about can this team turn around and start being competitive and being more in the playoff talk properly going into next season and beyond. And I look at that way. And if you're so focused on just the playoffs, and once the playoffs are done, you're out, okay, that's fine. But for me, I just look at it and go, there's so many good stories that I want to take a look. I want to see. And I said, you've got, maybe we start seeing Jack Rathbone, and then before the end of the season, maybe we see maybe we start seeing Vasily Podkolzin being played higher up in the lineup, or he basically just knocks down that door and forces Bruce Boudreau's hand, which is what he wants. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I have a lot more a long-term approach. I have throughout for most of this run too. It sucks that they couldn't keep it up and stay within the realistic chance of the playoffs here, but there's still more to watch than just the playoff run here.
Well, I tried to defend Kevin in the sense that I'm pretty sure he didn't mean that these games are meaningless. It's just that the likely chance of making the playoffs isn't there. And I'm very much in the same boat.
We talked last week about kind of trying to be the more positive part of Canucks land, and I just didn't want people to think, yes, well, if they win, we still believe they have a chance. I'm just not at that point of believing that they're going to be competing for the playoffs anymore. I think it's pretty much Nashville, Dallas, Vegas battling for those final two spots. You're right, though. There is a lot of other things to be playing for. There's a lot of other things to be looking for. And I think first and foremost out of all of this was something that I quite frankly have been more than surprised that we're having this conversation, but I guess we need to dig into this anymore, a little bit more. But it looks like we are having some questions about who the coach is next year. Patrick Allvin was interviewed by Patrick Johnston. And he didn't exactly come out and give Bruce Boudreau the endorsement and say that he's going to be the coach. Again, like Sean, you're saying, Allvin is looking at this from a long-term approach. And at one hand, I think that, well, this is pretty obvious that after what Boudreau has done, that he should be back. But on the other hand, I started to think about this a little bit more, and maybe we'll start with Chris here after this. Allvin wasn't here when Boudreau was hired. Castonguay wasn't here when Boudreau was hired. Rachel Dory wasn't here when Boudreau was hired. Cammy Granato was and Derek Clancy was not there. So the only one that really endorsed this hire, truthfully, was Jim Rutherford. And I think there's two things at play here. I think one, who hired him, and that part, I guess, in part of, you want to bring in your own coach, and truthfully, who's running this team. And I still think that there's a perception in Canucks land that this is Rutherford's team, not Patrick Allvin's. But two, I think ultimately it's Allvin wanting to put in this staff, which is a younger staff. I think, interestingly enough, I mean, we talk about the diversity of it, but it's a fairly young staff, may want to go in a different direction.
And that might be a legitimate chance that that's what they have planned, and that they aren't planning on going with Boudreau. But I also understand the kind of shock and awe response from most of the fan base and the general hockey community that he's done this well. He's helped turn the team around. Why would you basically slap him in the face for having this huge impact, positive impact on the team? So, I really get both sides of things. I get where Allvin might be potentially strategically looking towards the future with maybe Boudreau's playoff reputation in mind, being like, maybe he's not the best fit for what we want a cup contending team to be. But at the same time, you're also having to balance that with the success that he's had this season. So it's really going to be interesting to see how many changes, both on and off the ice, will happen with the Canucks this upcoming offseason.
And before we go on here, Tyler snuck in very nicely, just smoothly right in. Like with the golf cart, I was talking about Tiger Woods. I don't know if you realize that, but I think your sneak in was probably the most in-depth and golf-like that we have had on the history of running.
I mean, normally there's not traffic in Terrace to worry about, but at this point it was like traffic. In regards to Bruce Boudreau, unless they specifically have somebody in mind, I can't see how that they would want to make a coaching change here. I mean, there's nothing to me that's obvious, like the team has quit on the coach. the coach is also one that's very comfortable with the spotlight of a Canadian market. And the other thing is there's already been so much change that's happened in a short period of time. Are they then going to make more change? At least taking Boudreau into next season offers some degree of stability while they do a roster makeover. And then there's also the old adage about having the coaching change card to play. And as a management team goes through more of those coaching changes, the runway gets shorter for them. So, and in the case of both Jim Benning and Mike Gillis before that, I think they were only permitted one coaching change, and then after that, if the results weren't there, they lost their job as well. So I can't see any scenario where Bruce Boudreau is not back, but at the same time, everything should be on the table when a new management group comes in.
The one thing I want to say is that how patient has this management group been ever, like whether it was Rutherford taking his time getting a GM in, whether it was Alvin taking his time assessing the roster and not rushing into drastic moves at the deadline. I honestly think this is just more of the same. I think this is more of them just assessing everything, understanding what the issues are in this roster, and then being able to once the season's over, I think we will see we will see the Boudreau shoe drop either way. I think he's back. The only issue I have with that is the start, how the team's starting an issue here. That's the only thing I'm a little I can come up with as to why they wouldn't bring him back. But to me, starting is more of a player issue. You can have a coach that's going to yell at you until they're blue in the face just before the game to try and pump you up. But if you're not mentally prepared and physically prepared before that, you're still not going to start properly. So I think that I'm not sure. I'm not sure what more they would be expecting from Boudreau and what in terms of what he's delivered in terms of this season, because under Boudreau they've been honestly what I expected this team to be going into the season. Not the tire fire that it was beforehand, but they're exciting. They've got some offensive punch. We always said it was a flawed roster, and I think the players are still struggling through some confidence issues and everything like that. So, yeah, I think it's more of a patience and making sure that they're not being rushed into a decision as opposed to anything else.
I think a couple of things here. As far as the starts, that was going on with Travis Green, so that's clearly not a coaching issue. Like there was terrible starts when Travis Green was around. This is a player's issue, and I think so. To me, I that's not on Boudreau. I mean, there's been discussion of practice habits. That is also not on Boudreau either. I would argue and suggest strongly that this is on the players. I think it's probable that Bruce Boudreau is back, but the other thing to remember here is Boudreau also has the option himself to say if he wants to come back or not, because they gave him the option to come back. That was part of the contract that Aquilini gave him, so he has the choice whether or not to come back. But I'm wondering, did the shine come off on him a little bit? I mean, we were talking about him, and he was talking about wrestling. He was just like when it started in Vancouver, it was a party, and I think it was just relief that there was a change. But now that things have kind of fallen down, we're not seeing that. But it's also because the club isn't winning. But to me, I look at this just again. Let's look at the other team that we talk about on this podcast. Daryl Sutter. It took pretty much kind of a half of a year for Sutter to sort of establish himself and what he wanted to do. I think it would be prudent to bring Boudreau back. And I think allow him to have the training camp to implement his style with his type of players. I mean, do we think that we have a Bruce Boudreau type team here in Vancouver? Like, have we even had that conversation yet? So, yeah, to me, I think to me this is it's a no brainer that you bring Bruce Boudreau back, but unless there is someone amazing, I just can't think of anybody that would even be close to a better replacement than Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah, and this is one of those things too where it'd be hard for me to believe that ownership is completely hands off with their desires or preferences, shall we say, as to who the head coach is. I don't think the Aquilinis have much care to nitpick the whole staff, but I think that they're very big fans of Bruce Boudreau, and that's a big part of the overall philosophy. So again, unless there's somebody with NHL experience that they specifically have in mind, I can't see how they're not bringing Bruce Boudreau back for one more year.
The other thing is we talked about how this ownership group's been a little more bottom line dependent here. There is a payout that's due to Bruce Boudreau if he's not brought back on that option year.
Yeah.
So I look at that and and unless there's an absolute grand slam replacement out there, which I don't see. When I say don't see, it's like it would have to be right off the top of my head. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's just I honestly think it's just the patience factor with this management team led by Rutherford, then Alvin, to not be rushed into decisions here. And
and it's not like Bruce sounds like he's run out of ideas or quit on the team. I mean, you hear that sometimes from coaches when they get near the end and they're not winning very many games and they've tried all kinds of different things. Their tone in their press conferences sounds defeated. I'm not hearing anything like that from Boudreau right now. When you do hear that, and Travis Green, I mean, when he made the comment like, well, this is what we have here, I mean, he didn't last after that. Then that's, it's kind of an admission that he's given up, right?
Purely a hypothetical, but like just going to throw this out there as a potential pot stirring question. Like, let's say Alvin has a name in mind, and let's say that guy's name is Mike Sullivan, and he's wondering if he might be available in the offseason. Because we all know how much institutional knowledge our management group has from Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're thinking that there might be some changes in the offseason in Pittsburgh, and maybe they're just biding their time until then.
Possibility. That's a credible name to throw out there. I think one that would sell with the fans. The question for me is more, would Mike Sullivan want to come here? I mean, he was here before as an assistant under John Tortorella, and where's he at with the Aquilinis? Obviously pretty tight with Jim Rutherford and with all their success in Pittsburgh. But then it comes back to what Sean talked about with bottom line driven decision making there, and that would come at a heavy price, and you'd still be paying Bruce Boudreau to not work for you. So it still seems like a long shot.
And Sullivan's under contract till the end of 23-24. So it's not like he was a potential free agent to coach this upcoming summer. So I don't know why they would get rid of him anyways. I think he should be up there for one of the best coaches this season with what he did with that Pittsburgh team that was missing Malkin and Crosby to start the season. So I just don't like it. That's why I said I don't know. No one's coming to the top of my the top of my head in terms of who would be a slam dunk grand slam replacement, because otherwise why that's the only way I would say that it makes sense to change it up here.
And given that contract situation, I mean, the Penguins would have to give permission for the Canucks to talk with Sullivan, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear that be a no.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I was just throwing the idea out there as a total, I didn't have any actual reason behind that. It was just,
I had to look it up.
There's a good reason. I mean, they have that history before, and it was a great success. So it's not a crazy name to throw out there, but yeah.
And the other thing with the Boudreau and his lack of playoff success, you have to get there first. Like, you can't just say, "Oh, we just have playoff success," and you just never make it. And the other thing is, how many first-time coaches have we had win the Stanley Cup over the past 5-6 years? There's been a few. You don't have playoff success until you do.
Yeah, I don't like making much of that because I mean, look at his regular season track record, and that's a much bigger body of games and the rigors of a regular season and dealing with injuries in a shorter playoff series. You know, things can really swing one way or the other on not very much. And in some of the cases in the past, he's had teams that have gone into Game 7 as the favorite, and that introduces some new pressures as well in terms of trying to prepare your team. So I don't know. How can you disqualify him just based on his record in Game 7s? You know, he's still getting teams to the playoffs on a regular basis and still performing reasonably competitively in those playoff series when they do get there.
Yeah, I think he's brought a lightness to the group. I think it's just, to me, the issue here is what you do with the core, and I do think, the core. There has to be a change within the core. We've talked about this enough. We've been talking about this for a couple of years, though. Even with Green and Benny, there has to be. I think, to me, we're going to see a major change within the core, and you want to get the type of players that can succeed with you. You almost need to do what Patrick Allvin and Jim and the staff need to do. And let me just word it this way, because I feel like we're not giving this guy his due. What Patrick Allvin needs to do, and the reason I need to say it that way is because I feel like we keep adding Jim Rutherford, we keep adding staff, and with other GMs we don't do that. I don't know why I'm doing that with Patrick Allvin, but what Patrick Allvin needs to do is get Bruce Boudreau type of players. It's what Brad Treliving did with Daryl Sutter. It's really what Ron Hextall, what every other GM does to get their coach that success. That's what needs to happen here. You've got to get Bruce Boudreau type of players here. And it's not like we're trying to making sure we have all these we're filling a 20-man roster here, which are 20-player roster. You got to fill the type of players that can fit and play the way Bruce Boudreau wants to play. It's that simple. That's what the next part of this is.
Mm-hmm. And then and the other thing is, it has to mesh with how the GM and the management team want to build the team too.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then there was a lot of talk about how those Pittsburgh teams were built, and that was speed on the wings, and how the Canucks don't have enough speed on the wings. So I think that'll be a big priority going into the offseason for sure. But I don't see that being something that Bruce wouldn't want. But I think we're going around in circles here, and I think am I wrong in saying that I think we all agree that I think this is more of a patience and just more continuing to take a patient approach to assessing this whole team and making sure that the moves that they do make in the offseason are the correct ones, as opposed to just saying, well, he did well, let's sign him on long term here. Because the other thing is, do you really are they really wanting to bring Bruce Boudreau back on just that option year and basically make him make him a lame duck coach for that 1 year, or are they going to be signing him to a multi-year contract with that going forwards?
Yeah, I have to agree with Sean. They probably are going about this in a very patient evaluation sort of mode. It fits every other behavior action that they've done since Allvin's been named and has brought in the supporting staff. It seems very much like they're not going to be rushing to anything. They're taking their time, they're biding their time, and they're doing a big picture evaluation on how they want to build this team long term.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and Stefan Roger wrote that in Canucks Army. He's talked about how the approach of the trade deadline as well, and just it's about patience, and that's what I think. I think the fan base for the most part needs to get that through and understand. And I think they're starting to. And it's just I think the impatience is waiting for something to happen because I feel like this has been the island we have been living on for the last 3-4 months has been, well, we're here and we're just waiting for a major shoe to drop. And, I think that frustration, I can understand the frustration of something not happening for that, but I think waiting for the right time is the key. So, yeah.
The Canucks fan base not being patient? You don't say.
Yeah. Well, I think the fans are showing more patience ever since the big house cleaning happened in December.
More than normal, for sure.
Yeah, that impatience is starting to come back though now as it becomes clear they're not going to make the playoffs, and there's an eye on next year now and what the changes should be or could be or whatever. But have faith in this management group. They're shiny, they're expensive, they're regaled for diversity and their resumes, and let's give them a chance in an actual off season to really put a mark on this team.
And the other thing is that, again, there's no rush.
Yeah,
they have a few more games to play in this season, and then they've got to be able to. They got to have the exit meetings and everything, right? So there's a lot of information that they can still gather before making a decision. And I'm still pretty certain that we're going to see Bruce Boudreau back for at least 2 more seasons under contract for at least 2 more seasons. I get the lack of patience, but I just look at the situation here. Like what can they do? What should they be doing right now? And I just look at the situation and temper your expectations back a little bit to knowing that we're likely looking at July as when we're going to see big moves from the Canucks.
Well, let me just toss one more flint in the fire here, or one more wood in the fire. Legitimately, this year, we usually know the type of hockey that is going to win the Stanley Cup. I think this year that is going to be very interesting in terms of, because we've got, you've got the 7-6 games. The scoring is up since the trade deadline. So what type of hockey in the playoffs is going to be played as well? And I'm not saying that's not the Boudreau part, but it's like the style of play. Still, I think where are the teams going? Are we in that
same as before?
Yep.
I the same as before.
As soon as playoffs hit, we're going to see lockdown. We're going to see things locked down. We're going to see drag them out, playoff style hockey, and all those teams that are playing run and gun right now are going to struggle. And the other thing too with that, for me, don't chase. That's what got Benning in trouble. That's what got Gillis in trouble. They started chasing what they thought the game should be instead of dictating it themselves. And that's what I want from this management, from Alvin and this management group. I want them to say, this is how we want to play. This is how we're going to implement it and go with it. Don't just wait for like, okay, maybe they're going to allow a little more offense in this playoffs. No, just figure out what you want and do it yourself. Don't wait for what could happen in these playoffs, because the style of team that wins year to year changes. Some years it's high. Some years it's more offensively driven teams, like when Washington won, and some years it's more heavy teams. But when you start making changes to the style, is when you're on that cusp. When you're trying to build a team from where the Canucks are, I think you need to be having more of a long-term approach in terms of, this is how we want to play, and then make tweaks later on when you're closer.
Well, what I was going to say though is there's still some information gathering about what teams are going to do. Like I agree with you. It's going to be low event hockey. It always has been. I believe it always will be, even though there's a desire for some to change. but there's still some important information from teams that you will get, because this is the best. This is the true best. This should be where the teams are at. This is the peak of where everybody is at. So there's stuff to learn from here. So that's part of that information gathering, that you're not reinventing the wheel, but you're understanding what are we doing on the wheel, right? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I mean, for the Canucks in particular, whenever they get to a postseason, they have no chance unless they play faster and heavier.
Yeah.
Emphasis probably more on the faster, but both of those things have to happen, and it's pretty evident with the group they have now that they're not close in that regard.
No,
regardless of what the standings tell you.
No, they're not. Which leads to another part of this is the and Dan and I had a lengthier chat about this offline with the Calgary Flames, because the Stockton Heat are in a playoff run. The Calgary Flames are going to be in a playoff run. And there's when the Flames wrap up, there's going to be Flames fans out there that are going to want to see Jacob Pelche. They're going to want to see Dustin Wolf. They're going to want to see some of the young kids and bring them up. But the Stockton Heat are in a playoff chase. And I bring this up with the Abbotsford Canucks, because now we're going to hear, let's bring up the kids. Let's bring up the kids' conversation from Abbotsford. Is it valuable to throw them in a non-relevant, and I don't say that it's not relevant, but it's not, it's almost sort of, it's not high pressure. It's NHL, but it's not high pressure. Or is it better to keep them down? And the interesting thing about the Abbotsford Canucks right now is they're in a battle with the Bakersfield Condors for fourth place. And how significant that is because the home team in the AHL has home ice advantage for every single game. So it's not 2-2, it's every single game. Is it more valuable to keep the kids down for a playoff run with the Abbotsford Canucks, or do you want to see them up playing NHL games?
What kids are we talking about, though? That's another issue with this franchise, is that AHL team. You've got Danila Klimovich. No, you keep him down.
He stays down for sure.
He stays down. You've got Jack Rathbone, who's I think just basically he'll come up and play if needed. I think they want to keep him down there as long as possible this season. They've got Lockwood up there right now, and all of it comes down to injuries too. But outside of that, who else is down there that you really want to see?
I wouldn't mind having a look at Spencer Martin. That would be
we already
another
saw
one.
that though.
Yeah, I mean, okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess we'll have a conversation of how much you play Demko down here, but at some point. But to me, Jack Rathbone. For me, I think Jack Rathbone should stay down once Hughes is back. You keep Rathbone down and you let him go on that run. I would, I actually really like what Will Lockwood has brought. I think that he should be on the team next year, but he's a guy that I would like to see in Abbotsford. I think who did they pencil? It was Pod Colson they penciled to go down last. They put the pencil on. Was it paper down? Yeah. I think that will be great for him for that to happen. I think to me, the important thing is learning how to win. And that Calder Cup is, I mean, it's not the Stanley Cup, but it's a tournament that you get to learn how to win in. And I think it's a great experience. Let the kids run in the AHL.
I mean, you look at Jacob Markstrom and how he benefited from a full run to the Calder Cup final with the Utica Comets, and then when he came up to the Canucks, he was just a stellar NHL goaltender, and then carried that into the bubble playoffs as well. So, to me, if it were my decision, the only guys that would be coming up now are the ones that don't look challenged anymore at the AHL level. Beyond that, then yes, I think all these younger guys should be continuing to play and get a taste of that playoff intensity, even though it's at the minor league level.
In terms of who's basically ready for right on the edge is Lockwood and Rathbone at this point, and they're basically going to be up at the injury dependent. That's why Lockwood's up, and that's why Rathbone's up right now. After that, There's no there's no one I really think you need to bring up. I think you keep Spencer Martin down there because it makes so much more sense to keep him playing games as opposed to sitting and backing up or whatever up at the NHL level. And then you go from there. And plus it also you're also probably going to sign some. We're also going to see them maybe sign some NCAA players coming out, and giving them a couple games here or there near the end of the season too. So again, if the Canucks had a deeper AHL prospect pool, I'd be a lot more interested in having. I think there'd be a lot more better conversation about this. But there's just not. There's not anyone there that is really knocking at the door properly that makes sense to bring up to go through the last few games of this season.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, I think that this would be. I know fans want to see Jack Rathbone, and I know that there's a desire to see the kids, but I just think 1 year of a playoff run with a Jack Rathbone, especially on defense, will help so much. It really will. It's just part of that development. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not watching Rathbone at the AHL level. Clearly, when he started the season at the NHL level, he was in over his head a little bit. Defense is tough, man. I don't know. I don't think there's any sort of too much patience with a defenseman to really get them comfortable. And the challenge at the AHL level will be greater in playoff puck. So yeah, leave him there. But still, they got a number of NHL games left to play here this month, and somebody's gonna have to fill those roster spots if injuries dictate that.
And the other thing is, I'm going to bring up what a friend of the show said about younger players and making sure that they're physically ready to play at the NHL level when they get up here. Mm-hmm. And that's Peter Labardia said that. And I completely agree. I think there's a lot of people out there who want to rush these kids up there because they're new and shiny, and maybe at those players' detriments. I think the Canucks have rushed some players in the past 5-6 years here. And I think it has hurt them, and it has hurt the way that them being able to develop players going forwards. And I think I look at one player in particular that I think is really hampered by not playing a year or two in the AHL, and that was Adam Gaudette. I don't think he ever was physically at the NHL level. Weight wise and strength wise, I don't think he ever was.
Well, I think we can even say that with Petey a little bit too, right? I think it's better now at this stage of this season, but even earlier this season and definitely in the past. I mean,
he's someone different.
Stature, let's just say, has been an issue,
and his skill level made up for that. But there's our players out there that don't have that skill level, don't have that hockey mind that PD has.
Yeah.
Then they get lost. And that's the players like an Adam Gaudette, like that Jake Virtanen, I think he was rushed for as well. But it's just, you have to find a way to find that right balance. Right. And I do. And that's such a top, that's the probably the biggest question that gets teams get wrong is when to call up a player, and 90% of the time when they get it wrong, it's because they've rushed them.
And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. We always talk about when we do the redo of the drafts, and we always look at, well, that guy, how did you pick that guy ahead of that guy? But we never put in the development of this guy, of the player, into play into that factor. And, to support Chris, because, Chris did this, I'm going to stir the pot, maybe ask a question that might stir the pot a little bit. Has there been a sense of entitlement with the younger players in Vancouver?
Anybody else want to take that one?
I don't think I think entitlement's a strong word, but I think comfortability, or if that's even a word, I think they are a little bit too. I think they were a little bit too comfortable. I think you saw Höglander struggle this year more than I think we were hoping and expecting. But that's up and downs of just having a career in the NHL. You're gonna have good years, you're gonna have bad years, and you have to find a way to battle through. And you have to find a way to be a contributor even if you're not producing offensively. And that's something that Höglander struggled with this year. I think we're seeing the player that we thought Podkolzin could/should be in brief spurts. It's the consistency that's the issue. But I think maybe with a little bit in players who aren't there anymore, there was maybe some of that more so. But I don't think that we're seeing. I don't think it's to the point of what was the word you used? I've already lost it. Entitlement. Yeah, I don't think with the current group of young players the entitlement is there, but I think they were getting close to it.
The only one that comes to mind for me would have been Jake Virtanen. I think that was the one obvious example of a guy that was given a spot and given an opportunity and given a long rope, more so than any of the other younger players. Probably for political reasons of him being a local guy and being a first overall pick and Benning's first pick that he did ever make in his time as a general manager. There would have been, there would have been reasons for that, but I don't think anybody else is being handed an opportunity that they haven't earned or deserved. And then when they've gotten a look, they're handled according to how they perform when they're given that chance. So yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The only one who kind of got gifted an opportunity was Höglander, but he wasn't gifted one this season. No. And I think you're still seeing spurts of what made him successful when he was good in last season, but he's still finding a way to battle through it as well.
And last season on a team with more older veterans that were struggling, the odd nights, Höglander was one of the few guys that stood out for his effort. But with this team, he's having a little tougher time, and it's a different coach, and there's a fresher approach being taken with this team, and Höglander, on those measures he hasn't stood up to that test.
And yeah, I'd agree with Sean that the use of the word entitlement probably isn't, I guess, the best word in this context. But overall, like as far as whether there's guys that maybe were, like we would use the word gifted opportunities that they maybe weren't ready for. Yeah, I think that may have been has been what happened here in the past season or two with some of the players where they kind of got rushed through, and that kind of goes back to talking about the development of younger players. Like, yeah, some of them got rushed, but with the lack of player depth right now, they're basically trying to see what they got and try and use the best players that they got while they have them. So, yeah, it's really a hard tightrope to balance on.
Yeah, again, because the whole idea of getting veterans in it was fine. It was the amount that they ended up paying said veterans that became an issue. It popped to me when you said something about Pettersson. And I'm not saying that Pettersson was entitled, but there was an expectation on Pettersson and Hughes to be immediately in the lineup, and it's understandable considering where they were in the lineup and the talent that they shown, that it was like, okay, yeah, they need to be in the opening day roster. But I that's where kind of my theory came from. There was,
Yeah, but
I think it's also learning how to win too.
Yeah.
But back then, if those guys were not on the team, who was instead? Like, there was no clearly better option where they failed to crack the lineup. But you had to get them in. The team had to get younger. They've constantly been in this chase mode of trying to get younger on the fly without doing the full burn it down rebuild approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also NHL's a very tough league to win in, and learning how to win is a big step. And just because you don't get it right away doesn't mean that you're entitled or complacent or or anything like that. But it's just that means you just have to work harder.
Yeah.
We're also talking about Petey, who broke down his shot into how many different stages and worked on it for a summer. That to me doesn't sound like someone who's complacent or entitled.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he was at all. Like because I think anyone that knows Pettersson and if you followed even like 30% of Pettersson's career, he's not complacent in any way, shape, or form. He is a different cat, for sure. And even I mean, I Quinn Hughes is probably in that same type of vein. But you know, there were some other players that I thought I think played like they knew they had a lineup spot, and
Yeah, and that's Jake Virtanen would be that.
Yeah.
I just the work ethic was lazy, and he kept getting a chance. So what would be motivating him to keep going, right?
Yeah.
I don't see any signs of that with Petey or Hughes. There's never any obvious signs of sulking or pouting or openly showing disagreement with the coach. And I don't recall anything in the media with their comments where they're acting pouty either. So I mean, Quinn's like all the Hughes guys, very blunt in how they discuss things, but I haven't heard anything about expecting a different role or more ice time or anything like that, or feeling like he wasn't getting a fair shake from the coach.
Yeah. Is there anything else with the Canucks we need to get into? Because and the reason I ask is I have a funny feeling we're going to have a couple of interesting discussions here.
I think we've gotten everything that is out there right now for the Canucks.
Okay.
That and us keeping Canucks talk to 45 minutes, that's progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think in part it's there's a conversation. I'll tease. We'll have the superstar conversation on Monday. Let's leave that for there. But Sean, let's do the Pig and Duke, and then we'll get into other NHL. You guys have any questions, comments? Of course, keeping it in there. Yeah.
All right, so yeah, we've got we partner up with the Pig and Duke here in Calgary. They've got two locations. Their downtown location on 4th Street and 4th Ave Southwest, and they've got their neighborhood location in the Beltline here on 12th Ave and 12th Street Southwest. And we have partnered up with their Pig and Puck Club. We will be announcing the winners of our two draws for the Pig and Puck Club for 2 tickets to the Calgary Flames and Vancouver Canucks game on April 23rd on Monday. And we want to thank Joe and Steven for all their support for this podcast. And we want to, again, I feel like we're congratulating them a lot because they've been doing a lot over the last little bit. They got 10 years at the 12th Ave location for a while. And then they're opening up a new pub here in town. The crap, I had it.
If memory serves, I want to say it was the Royal Exchange.
Yeah, the Royal Exchange Pub and Grill, which is on 2nd Street and 6th Ave Southwest. Their grand opening is tomorrow. So if you're in town, go check out any one of those locations. And like I said, we'll be making the draw for the tickets on Monday. And we'll be looking forward to Devin and I. We'll be looking forward to seeing the winners there. Chris will not be there, unfortunately, as he is in Kelowna.
But that means that there's an extra spot available for one of you guys. So there is now 2 spots instead of 1. So there you go.
Yeah, right. So, tune in on Monday to find out who wins.
So there you go. By the way, the Max Major Midget Tournament is happening in Calgary right now. There are 4 teams from BC there. I'm, of course, play-by-play with the Greater Vancouver Canadians, and they are planning to head to the Pig and Duke because it was on the go-to list. I did add the added incentive, though, that Steven is a Canucks fan, so I think that might help. So, but I mean, for any of the teams out there at the Mac Major Tournament, by the way, go check that out, by the way, if you have the time. This is Devin played in that tournament. And some other well-known NHL players have played in that tournament as well. And this is a great opportunity for them. But they'll probably get a chance to go check out the Pig and Duke. So And retweet our pod clips. We'll have our news packs every day this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and other stuff as well. So we're present all the time. So I feel like this will start here with a little bit of it's still somewhat of a chat, but I think we've moved on a little bit, but we haven't had a chance to have a conversation about it. But Friday, in Arizona, Dylan Johnson's friend of the show, Dylan's Anaheim Ducks, Trevor Zegras scored a Michigan goal, and later on in the game, there was a scuffle between a number of players, but the centerpieces of it were Jay Beagle and Troy Terry. Then Tyson Nash said, if this is the type of way that you're going to play, in essence, you deserve what you're going to get. And Tyson Nash, in an interview with Craig Morgan, did not back down on those comments.
Nor should he as a color guy.
Okay. Can I start with first? There is a word of the week, by the way, and the word of the week was road trip, because the Flames are on. I chose the word. I got to choose the word this time because the Flames are on when we did the podcast, the Flames are on a Lincoln road trip. The Canucks are on the road. It makes complete sense. Road trip is the word of the week.
And because we're the Wednesday show this week, we're not used to following the Monday lead. So there you go. We made a mistake.
Yes.
Communication.
Yes, and only if only I told everyone, or so I thought everyone listened to Monday's podcast, whatever. Anyway, okay, so I guess the first part, let's leave Nash. We'll just leave Nash here just for a quick second.
Yeah, there's a topic to be had there.
There, and I do think an important one.
Yeah.
This Trevor Zegras hot dog thing, I think, is getting a little bit overblown. Trevor Zegras actually was a high-level lacrosse player in high school, and this goal this is what he's trying to do. By the way, Matthew Tkachuk tried this against Los Angeles, and it didn't work. And I didn't see any LA Kings running off the bench to start swinging at him.
Yeah, did Tkachuk get involved with the goalie after too?
No. That one, I
Right.
believe that what the defenseman did is he swung at the stick, which was, I think, the right thing. I don't think there was nothing illegal about it, but it just was a basic play. It was a Michigan play. He didn't score. I don't get this whole Trevor Zegras is trying to be a hot dog. I think this is a legitimate part of his game.
I think people are trying to spin this story. We listened to Jay Beagle. This got out of hand. You shouldn't see a guy beaten to hell like Troy Terry was.
No,
it just shouldn't. It just shouldn't happen.
I don't understand why that was about the Trevor Zegras Michigan play.
Yeah, well, people are all defensive about trying to keep that part of today's hockey in the game. But the thing is even if you don't run the goalie over or slash the goalie, if you get in the goalie's face, it's a time-honored tradition in hockey that you go and let him know to get out of there. And then it kind of escalated from there. And if Troy Terry, if you want to go and get involved and stick up for a guy, it might not turn out very well for you. And that's what happened. Jay Beagle's 36 years old. He's been around. That's just hockey. Yes, I know it kind of throws us back to a time of thuggery and doesn't reflect very well nowadays. But, if Zegras just stays out of the goal crease, we don't have a problem here.
But I don't understand. To me, I felt like those were two separate incidents that were blaming into one.
Yes.
If
that's
Trevor
what people do. They spin things.
And I think that's what. I
right.
think that there was because, and unfortunately, Kev, I think the Tyson Nash comments were what spurred this on.
Yeah.
When he said you want to skill it up, I'm like, there was nothing for. I don't think that there was anything about the Michigan goal that played into what happened with the push from behind, cross check to Troy Terry, to Trevor Zegras, and then Beagle losing his mind and doing what he did to Troy Terry. I don't think it had anything to do with the Michigan at all. And the only reason it got any airplay was because Tyson Nash wanted to have his Jack Edwards moment and put on a show.
Yeah, and in regards to that, Tyson Nash's job as a color commentator is to give his opinion. And he's doing a local broadcast and works for the Coyotes. And yeah, he went into full Homer fan mode there. It's not the first time we've seen that on a regional broadcast, and it won't be the last. In baseball, it's absolutely nauseating how silly it gets with color commentary when there's a beanball situation. So yeah, I don't think that. So I don't know, Kevin. You can steer us away from that tangent for now if you like. But I mean, I think that a color commentator needs to have the freedom to step into those areas sometimes and not be canceled over it.
Regional broadcasts, like, look, regional broadcast, there is an expectation of them to be pretty Homer, and it's. You know,
at the very least, supportive. The fans want to listen to a broadcast where they feel like the guys talking are on their side.
Yeah, and from Tyson Nash's perspective, he's with the team year round. He's probably just as frustrated watching this Arizona Coyotes team as the Coyotes are playing. I think that my problem, I mean, it wasn't the greatest comment that Tyson Nash has ever made. Like, I'm not saying that this is a great comment from Tyson Nash, but that being said, I really feel that what happened here, part of the problem is that we took two incidents. Nobody watched the actual game. No. So what happened is we thought that this whole thing was about the Trevor Zegras Michigan goal, where it had nothing to do with it, and we just took it and everybody overreacted. That simple.
Yeah, I mean, and Tyson's comments are basically saying, take that, you punk. And frankly, probably most Arizona Coyotes hardcores feel the same way.
Right. I mean, okay, so in a situation, let's throw this into a Canucks perspective for a second here. If John Garrett said someone should go after Petey for the way that they swing at, someone took a swing at him and nobody stood up for Petey. Is that an offside comment? Or as Canucks
I don't know what's onside or offside anymore, Kevin.
But no, but that's the thing, right? It's like, it's so.
Wasn't he into some hot water over saying something about Brad Marchand earlier this year that Anson Carter made a noise about? I don't remember exactly the specifics, but
yes, John Garrett and Anson Carter got into it.
Yeah.
I think this to me was more about. This to me is more about people weren't exactly paying attention to the situation, and the quote blew up.
Yeah.
The situation, nobody watched the situation. People reacted to the quote. I don't think Trevor Zegras is a hot dog. I think that whatever happened there, I think what Beagle did with Troy Terry was offside and probably should have been a suspension. And I do agree with Jennifer Boudreau that probably should have happened. And I do think I still stand by this. General Boudreau should be the head of NHL player safety. But
the only issue with like that, I just don't know if there's a precedent that they can actually come back at with that. I don't know. And
remember Zach Cassian when who was it that he really beat up and got dinged for? I can't remember.
Wasn't that Chucky's first major scuffle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that got pretty out of hand, and I mean, it went on for
the
a long
aggressor.
time.
Yeah, I think you could do the aggressor there, and maybe they should. But the other thing too is like, what makes hockey special is it is a violent sport that it is also skilled. You have the physicality and the brutality of it, as well as the skill. It's finding that right combination. And this one or the other is what I hate, because what I love about this sport and what makes me come back and watch many games, no matter how bad the Canucks are, or if I'm watching another team, is that I love that combination of physicality, violence, and skill. And maybe you can call me old school, you can call me a barbarian because I like that, but that's why it's That's why it is as popular as it is.
Yeah,
and
if
honestly,
we're going to sit here
I
and
think
say
it needs more of that.
if we're going to sit here and say that what Jay Beagle did, whether it's minor or to the extent that it was, if we say you are not permitted to engage another player after the whistle in that type of situation, we say that's a suspendable offense, no matter how severe it is. You're fundamentally changing the sport. This idea that you can't stick up for your teammates, that's a big change, right? Like if people want to say no, we can't have that, we'd rather let the referees and the league handle it. I promise you, not very many people will be satisfied with that.
Yeah, and the league. Well, I mean, we've had a long discussion about how the league handles things. I mean, there have been
Yeah,
things
the
that I
shits
thought should.
usually,
Yeah, exactly, and it's
because there's
like
no consistency, and
there's
there's you
absolutely.
don't know what influences there are. Here, the men out on the ice settle it.
Yeah,
That's again, I know it's barbaric and it's a throwback to times that maybe we don't want to go back to, but the players are never satisfied with how the referees and the league deals with things, so that they took it into their own hands and it got out of hand, and that happens. But that's part of what all these guys sign up for.
Well, here's the other thing that I think I'm going to stir the pot. Chris, you've inspired me. Thank you. It was not a couple of weeks ago that what Taylor Hall did to Igor Lyubushkin in that Boston-Toronto game, that was an extremely dangerous play that everybody was like, that's not a suspension. And now you're all, and then some of these same people are like, why is Troy Terry getting beat up? You said nothing with Taylor Hall. So as fans, we're not even consistent about what a punishment is or not. We're not. So why, like to me, it's convenient. To me, I think as fans, we're becoming conveniently violent. And I'm not a lover of the Leafs, but sometimes, like, just because someone wears a Leafs jersey, they're getting shit on. Like, what happened to Lyubushkin was ridiculous. That should have been a suspension. I will stand on that till that might be a hill I won't die on, but I'll stand on for a bit. That's a dirty play.
I'll give you the honest fan perspective. It only matters when it's my favorite player that's the victim.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem with putting it in the hands of the player safety department, is that there just isn't the consistency and the transparency in deciding on these types of transgressions for anybody to be happy with that. Now, I would agree that if you're a guy like Beagle and you decide to go vigilante and you severely hurt somebody in the process, that there should be a consequence for that. But we're venturing into the territory of saying that fighting should be suspendable automatically if we say that we're not gonna allow a situation where a guy goes in to stick up for his team because he's seeing he's seeing red when there's somebody in the face of the goalie or poking at the goalie or what have you. Last year in the playoffs, we dealt with this with the Corey Perry, John Tavares thing, right? And Corey was forced to fight Nick Foligno, and really, I think on merit we could say it was an unintended act that happened there, which knocked Tavares out of the series. But I mean, Corey Perry's a guy that gets it. He ended up having to fight because he understands the full picture. When something like that occurs, that there's going to be a need to be accountable out there, regardless of what the referees think.
The one thing I'm not liking as much, and I think it did, the one fight that really shook me up last year was the Brett Ritchie Jujhar Khaira fight, where Khaira hit the ice really hard.
Yeah.
I'm starting to not be a huge fan of, like, if there's a hit, you need to fight after that. I'm not.
Yeah.
That, to me, I think that needs to get out of the game, because it's like it's becoming that's not. I feel like that's some sort of code that is outdated a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, no,
well, it is, because and often those cases, the hits are legal plays. I mean, slashing the goalie after the whistle, slashing the goalie in any circumstance, you're not allowed really to touch the goalie at all in the blue paint. That isn't within the rules. So then when that happens, and then there's a response that happens there. I mean, I'm with you on that, Kevin. Clean hits you shouldn't have to defend clean hits. They should just happen and the game moves on.
And it's one of it's that problem with the quote unquote code that actually doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
It's all up to interpretation to the person and the player that's feels aggrieved. But there's so much gray in this sport, and which is why I love it. It's not black and white. You can have these debates, you can have these talks, and everyone's still entitled to their opinion. And like I said, you can call me a barbarian, you can call me like old school caveman, whatever. I fucking love it. It's why I watch. Like I went to watch when I went and watched Connor Bedard play against the Hitmen. There's two fights in that game, and it made me laugh and have a good time. Yeah. And there was scrums and everything when I went and watched the Hitmen play against the Swift Current Broncos this past Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's part of the fabric of the game, and why, and part of the reason why it's gotten so popular. And I honestly think it needs more of that. It needs more emotion, more good guys and bad guys and all that, because that's what sells.
It needs more personality.
Maybe it's because I just spent this past weekend watching WrestleMania, but I think we need a little more sports entertainment and all that, and creating baby faces.
John Tortorella's talked about in the past that hate in the game really does make it compelling for people, and if we keep taking that away, it becomes a less entertaining product to watch.
We want people to eyes on the product, and sometimes any publicity is good publicity, and it's and having a destination and appointment viewing, because that, hey, next Montreal Ottawa game in freaking April, I actually kind of want to watch it, because I want to see what happens between Gallagher and Stützle and Gallagher and the rest of the Senators.
Well, the Battle of Alberta, to make it relatable maybe to our audience here. I mean, anytime that Edmonton and Calgary get together, are we hyping it up because it's going to be some skill fest or some goaltending fest? No, it's because there's potential for fireworks, and they're playing at 8:00, and everybody's jazzed up in the arena.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that there's a vocal minority that watches it only on TV that is part of this let's get the fighting out of the game argument. But I guarantee you go to any hockey arena at any skill level that allows fighting, that crowd is on their feet and yelling when there's a fight happening. Everyone is engaged, everyone's paying attention, and everyone is on the edge of their seat.
Even in a rec league game, when you are automatically going to be suspended for multiple games, when there's a fight that happens, everybody has their sticks over the boards, tapping the boards after, because of what happened, bonding together with their teammate. And it's a fundamental part of the sport. That whole physical response,
that aggression. Yeah.
And then I don't think a fight should happen after a clean hit. That's one that I struggle with as well. But it's also a fast game too, right? And sometimes when what you see is a clean hit, you on the ice are going to see it as a dirty hit or a run at a star player, and you feel like you have to step up and protect them and avenge them. So it's not, again, it's like, just because we see it as a clean hit on TV after 3-4 replays and the slow motion camera doesn't mean that's how the players react in real time. And it's the same thing as well. Sometimes we see hits that after 3-4 replays and the slow motion replay, and we're like, oh, it has that. It's so fast. And again, that's why we love it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. I mean, I'm not as, I don't know how to word this.
You're not as bloodthirsty as the rest of us.
One of my issues, and I think maybe this is where you might be going, Kevin, but one of the problems nowadays with any kind of debate over anything that happens in sports is that there's this need to kind of push you on one side or the other of the issue. Like, apparently there's no middle ground here, right? Like, I think we're all people that like kind of want to stay on the middle ground a little bit, and that is we don't want to take away the bite to the game and the physical component that is so compelling to, and makes it more entertaining to watch. At the same time, we don't want guys bleeding out on the ice, or heaven forbid somebody dying out there. Nobody here, but on Twitter it becomes like, if you try to take the position that we're taking here, some people are going to say, no, you're barbaric and you want to send us back to the 1980s. It's like, no, we we wanted to be safer, we wanted to be faster, we wanted to be more skilled, but we do not want to take away the camaraderie and the compelling nature of a team sport where guys stick up for each other.
No man's land is not allowed.
Yeah.
Well, and I think where I want to push here too is some of this stuff that happened on Twitter. Again, everybody took this out of context, and people were posting this out of context, and we just react without okay, what's really going on here? Like, what's the situation here? And I know nobody is watching an Anaheim, Arizona game. That's not priority viewing. But
I mean, Dylan would.
Yeah, Dylan may. Yeah, Dylan did. But I mean, that's the problem. And you know what I mean? Even let's put this in the centerpiece of Connor McDavid. There are people out there who are that will show the stats of how often Connor McDavid gets touched and it's not a penalty. You know what we don't talk about? The amount of times that Connor McDavid causes penalties and stirs things up, and he does that a lot. And
that's fine. I have
no issue with that. He should be doing that.
Yeah,
he should totally be doing that. I have no issue with that.
I think it's great when star players have a little bit of bite to their game. We love Jerome McGinley for that. I mean, Ovi's got a little bit of that. So even Sidney Crosby's fought every once in a while when he's had enough. That's good.
Yeah. Where I also get a little bit, I don't know, this is where I'm a bit more old school is, and even not even 80s. I'm sorry, I am not, I'm going to say something that's going to make me sound like a really old crotchety man now. I don't like 7-6 games. I have not been a fan of the high scoring games all the time. I don't necessarily think that Florida Toronto game is as exciting as it was. It was, I'm sure it looked entertaining, but it also looked really slow. I like low scoring games where the strategy is involved and it goes down to the wire. I mean, this went down to the wire. But I think the generations under us, I think, are entertained by this. And I posted this on Twitter and I put this as a poll question. And I know that there's at least two of you that are not going to agree with me on this. And I'm not for it. But I think we are getting very close to seeing an adjustment to playoff overtime. I think it's either going to be at some point. And there's two. It's going to be 5-on-5 after the first period, and then and if there's no score, it's going to change, or they're going to change it. The NHL wants games at a 2.5-hour pace. They want games to be shorter because that's part of the generation now too. Is they want things to be shorter, and as much as we don't like it, I think that's coming.
Yeah, I think if there was to be a change, then it would be the same right from the beginning of the overtime. Probably not any kind of move to go to a shootout or anything crazy like that. But let's say they wanted it to be 3-on-3. I think you would be playing, 3 or 4 overtimes of 3-on-3 if that's what was required to settle the game. And obviously it wouldn't go as long. There'd be more potential for a goal. I just don't think anybody within the game wants to change. I don't think the players and the coaches want to change it. Management, I don't think, that's just I don't even think the broadcasters really care about that, frankly. I mean, if you're a guy like, you're a play-by-play guy, Kevin. I mean, if you did some double overtime and with the major midget team, wasn't that cool and compelling and something you can hang your hat on as a sort of a rare moment in your broadcasting career that you were a part of? I mean, I think there's, I don't know. The people that want to change it are just, I don't know if they're, just short attention span people, or they're not really that, they really don't care about the history of the game. But, like I was saying on Twitter today, I mean, there's not a lot of things in NHL hockey or even in hockey across the world that are still sacred. I think the idea of modifying the overtime to force an ending quicker is really a big change, right? Like, and I use the comparison to the MLB postseason. I mean, they don't, historically it's been, you keep playing by the same rules until they have a winner, and eventually through attrition, whether that's guys getting tired or just a mistake happens, the game ends. And I mean, even in our senior hockey league that I referee up here, the Central Interior Hockey League, yeah, we have overtime rules for the regular season, but in the playoffs, it is 5-on-5, and it'll be as many overtimes as necessary to settle a game. And like for me, it just again kind of a cool thing. 24 years of ref, never been to period 5 before until a game this in the playoffs this year. And everybody that was involved in that, whether they were fans or players, coaches, officials, that's a memory that we're all going to have for a very long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is
Yeah.
something compelling about it. I love the lengthy.
The tension just is so enormous, right?
I know, because and again, this is defense. I've said this before. Defense is a skill. I think we assume that defense is not a skill. Defense and goaltending is a skill. It's not an offensive skill. It is a defensive skill, but it still takes skill and endurance, and that is deserved to me. Like to me, I would not. I don't want to go there, but I think that the generation past us are not interested in that anymore, and I think this. I fear that's
patience. I'm sorry. I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand that the tension, everything, and the drama is there. And it's just this idea that you have to only have a TikTok length overtime is just bullshit. I'm sorry. It's absolute bullshit. And I agree with Tyler. I don't think there's any appetite for changing that in the players, the management, the owners, the broadcasters. I don't think at this point there's any appetite for that, because they understand that the drama of a double and triple overtime game is more worth it in playoffs than to just end it in 3-on-3.
And even in the bubble hockey, where there was, a real possibility that they would start throwing tradition out the window to make this tournament happen, they didn't compromise on that either. They actually had to push one game to the next morning because the Columbus-Tampa overtime went so long.
Yeah. And I said, I knew I was going to get to this point. Just like at some point you have to make sure that you're keeping the game to what it is and what it was and what's made it special. And in the playoffs, I love those double and triple overtime games because they just the tension is there, because all it takes is one play. And hockey is 5-on-5. And the only reason we've gone away from that in overtime is because for an 82 game season for each team, there's only so much time, and there's travel and everything. So when I get it. I kind of still wish it was 5-on-5 in overtime, and we didn't have a shootout. We still had ties. I still think that's better, but we've got 3-on-3 overtime and shootouts in regular season. But for the playoffs, what makes the Stanley Cup one of the hardest trophies to win is because of multiple overtimes, because of all that. Like, it just, don't ruin it. It's not broken. Don't fix it.
Yeah. I can understand an argument if it was so frequent that it was causing like broadcasting hell and that sort of thing. Then you might have a legitimate argument to change the rules and make it a 3-on-3 playoff overtime or alter the rules somehow. But I'm with Tyler and Sean here. Like, don't fix what isn't broke. It makes those moments are special, and there's something you will remember for a long time, if not for the rest of your days. Are those crazy long games that happened once in a lifetime or once or twice in a lifetime. And yeah, they make great stories. They make great memories. And yeah, I don't want to see that gone.
And I mean, in the last this century, let's say, just in terms of Canuck playoff memories. I mean, for me, some of the most memorable games were the Sedins against Dallas in Game 1. That one nearly went 4 full overtimes. That's an all-time Canucks playoff overtime. Morrison staving off elimination against Calgary in 04. That was in triple overtime, and that was, I think, the longest Canucks playoff game at the time. And then you look around the league and some other just just all-time NHL Stanley Cup playoff memories. Pat LaFontaine, I think that was almost 5 full overtimes.
Yeah.
There was the Keith Primo, 92 minutes and 1 second there. The Flyers Penguins, those still that was in year 2000. I mean, that's 22 years ago, and that's still holds up as an all-time just classic game because of how long it was.
But yeah, the audio from that Henrik Sedin goal was played as their banners went up to the roof. That shows you how important of a moment that was.
Yeah. So we're really talking about really dramatically changing the compelling factor of the Stanley Cup playoffs and what the long-term memories of the playoffs can be if we're gonna try and find a way to shorten overtimes.
There were 5 multiple overtime games last playoffs.
Yeah, that's not very many, I don't think.
No.
I mean, if it's double digits, okay, yeah. But even then, a lot of games might get through one overtime, and it's pretty early in the second before it's solved. So.
And that's 5 games out of how many total playoff games that postseason?
Yeah.
And I hear you. I think the change is coming though. I just get that sense that
I don't get that sense at all. I look at the. Just curious, Kev, why do you get that sense? Because I feel like Tyler and I have said that we don't get that sense. Chris, where are you standing on that?
I'm with you guys. I said that in my response that okay, I'm with you two and agree with you guys.
What are we missing here, Kev?
I still think that there's some in the NHL that want the games to be shorter.
Then get rid of video replay.
I know that's the thing. There's other opportunities.
Yeah, but
add length to the game.
Yeah, and I think that you watch. I think that there's some that they're just mesmerized at what happened in Florida, and even in San Jose last night when Mike Smith pushes the puck to Connor McDavid, and it was a fantastic goal. And you don't. I think people argue you don't get to see that, but I have news for you. My sense would be if it went 3-on-3, 4-on-4. It would probably be very conservative. That overtime would be very conservative, right? Like you're not going to let Connor McDavid run that you're going to have a much different game plan there. But yeah, that's all I could see that happening there.
Yeah. I mean, if their playoff ratings are clearly nosediving because of the length of games and there's and then owners are getting kind of concerned about losing interest with the fans because of the length of games, then sure. But I'm not sensing we're there yet. And if we do get there, I think we're a long way from that being a serious discussion. Certainly it'll be beyond Gary Bettman's tenure as the commissioner.
Yeah. I feel like we're decades away from that if it's happening.
Yeah.
We'll see. I just wanted to touch on a couple things just before we wrap this up. As we go here, the Flames are playing the Ducks. Same lineup, by the way, for the Flames as they had on Monday, and the Canucks are preparing to play the Knights. No Hughes, no Besser tonight, and Thatcher Demko is getting the start. Congratulations. What did I want to touch on here? Just quickly.
Quickly with the Canucks here, there, Kev. Boudreaus is on the roster in lineup. Rathbone is not.
Yes.
That's because they activated Boudreaus off of IR, and that means they can't play Rathbone due to his emergency call up.
There was a comment about that.
Yeah.
On the wanted to give a quick congratulations to both the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs and the Fraser Valley Rush as they won. Northeast Chiefs won the U17 BC EHL championship last weekend. And the Fraser Valley Rush are advancing to the SO Cup in women's hockey. So congratulations to that. Want to give a quick shout out to Ryan Chilton. He is the in-game announcer for the Greater Vancouver Canadians. He had an opportunity on Sunday to introduce the starting lineup for the Canucks and Knights. So that was a great opportunity for him. He got his buddies. He got to hang out with Al Murdoch for the day. And again, I just want to re-emphasize going to the Max Major tournament. There's been some of the best players who's played this game has been in that tournament. I'm really glad to see it back. I think that's a great tournament. And good luck to all the teams. And I did acknowledge this in the news pack. I just blanked because getting all my lists together of things there. But today is the 4-year anniversary of the Humboldt crash. And I know that it's not of top of mind for a lot of people, but it was a good reminder. I remembered that day. And you still, just for the families, just wanted to give a quick shout out there as well to the families and the staff of the Humboldt Broncos there. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah. And Elias, we normally go live around what is it? 5:30. No, 6:30 Pacific on Mondays to talk. Yeah, to talk Canucks, but it'll all depend on games and everything. And then we're also live on Wednesdays, normally in the afternoons, to talk Flames. But again, it all depends on what the schedules of the hockey games are.
Yeah. Sorry, we probably need to be next week. Looking Monday, it's the 10th. We'll be going Canucks on Monday. We should be fine there. I don't think. Yeah. Anyway, we should be going live on Monday. That's when the draw is. But we should wrap this up now because the games are about to start. So how do we follow everyone?
I am Bearded Canucks 03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
Devin, who took time from hanging out from his Tiger Woods camp spot to message, is Gordhouse09. I am KEVOLE. Shifts and Pucks, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. And we will be back Monday to talk Canucks for another podcast. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tyler, Chris, and Sean for joining. I always forget to say thank you to you guys, too. But we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.